The mall was buzzing that Saturday afternoon, packed with families, shoppers, and teenagers drifting from store to store, laughing and carrying bags. Nobody expected that in a matter of minutes, the entire food court would go silent as a black teenager was slammed against a wall, accused of stealing something he never touched. His name was Marcus Hill, 17 years old, dressed in a plain hoodie and jeans, carrying nothing more than his phone and a half-empty soda cup. He had just finished browsing sneakers when two security guards pointed him out to the police officers patrolling the mall. "There him. He's been acting suspicious," one of them whispered loudly, as if trying to make sure the entire food court could hear. The officers didn't ask questions. They didn't wait for explanations. They moved in fast, grabbing Marcus by the arm, twisting it behind his back, and slamming him against the tiled wall. "Empty your pockets. Now," one officer barked, his voice booming across the court. Marcus's eyes widened in shock. "What? I didn't steal anything. I was just looking at shoes." "Quiet," the second officer snarled, already pulling his hands into cuffs. The mall erupted in murmurs. People stopped eating, mothers pulled their kids closer, phones were whipped out to record. The scene looked like a headline waiting to happen. Marcus's heart pounded as fear and humiliation surged through him. He hadn't stolen anything, but the cops weren't listening. His words bounced off them like rubber bullets. "I didn't do anything," he cried, his voice cracking with a mix of fear and desperation. The first officer leaned in close, sneering. "Save it for the station, punk. You think you can walk in here and take what you want? Not on my watch." By now, a crowd had gathered, some whispering, others shaking their heads, and a few filming eagerly as though Marcus's life was entertainment. And then, something strange happened. One of the officers pulled a small wallet from his pocket, holding it high for the crowd to see. "Look what we found," he shouted, grinning smugly. But Marcus froze. That wasn't his wallet. He didn't even carry cash today. He had Apple Pay on his phone. "That's not mine," he protested, his voice trembling with panic. "I don't even own a brown wallet. Someone planted that." The officer smirked. "Yeah? Tell it to the judge." Whispers shot through the crowd. Some people seemed convinced he was guilty. Others frowned, sensing something off. The scene didn't add up. Because if Marcus was such a criminal, why did the cops look almost too eager, too rehearsed, too hungry for the cameras? Marcus's chest heaved. His face burned. His dignity was stripped from him in front of strangers. And yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about him. It was about making an example. But what no one in that mall knew, not the officers, not the security guards, not even the crowd with their phones, was that Marcus Hill wasn't just some random teenager. He was the son of Captain Elijah Hill, the most respected and feared police captain in the entire city. And once that truth came out, everything about this arrest would explode. Marcus's wrists burned under the cold bite of the steel cuffs. The officers marched him toward the exit like a trophy, their grip rough, their faces smug. His protests were drowned by the chatter of the crowd, half entertained, half uneasy. "See that? Thought he could get away with it. Typical. No, wait, something feels off. That kid looked scared, not guilty." Phones stayed pointed, recording every second. Clips were already being uploaded. Within minutes, hashtags would be trending. But none of that mattered to Marcus in the moment. His life, his future, his very identity was being crushed under the weight of an accusation he couldn't fight. And then it happened. One man in the crowd, a retired veteran named Mr. Dawson, squinted hard as the officers shoved Marcus past. "Wait a second," he muttered, his eyes narrowing. He recognized the boy's face. He had seen that face before, in a framed photo during a city award ceremony. It hit him like lightning. This wasn't just some teenager. "This kid's the captain's son," Dawson whispered under his breath, fumbling for his phone. His fingers trembled as he scrolled through his contacts until he found it. Captain Elijah Hill. He pressed call. On the other side of town, Captain Hill was sitting in his office at precinct headquarters, papers scattered across his desk, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. His phone buzzed. The caller ID made him sit up straighter. "Dawson? Haven't heard from you in a while. What's going on?" The veteran's voice came urgent, breathless. "Captain, it's your boy Marcus. They got him down at the mall. The police. They're saying he stole something, but I saw it with my own eyes. It's wrong. They're setting him up." For a moment, silence filled the captain's office. The air felt heavier. My son. Captain Hill's voice cracked, something it almost never did. Where is he now? They're dragging him out of the mall in cuffs, Dawson said firmly. You better get down here before something worse happens. The phone slammed onto the desk as Captain Hill stood, his jaw clenched, his chest heaving. His mind raced. Images of Marcus as a child, his laughter, his innocence, his promise. And now this. His son, paraded through a mall like a criminal? No, not his son. Captain Hill grabbed his coat and stormed out, his voice bellowing across the precinct. Unit, roll out to Greenridge Mall. Now, we've got a situation. Back at the mall, Marcus was shoved into the back of the squad car. The cuffs cut into his skin. Tears welled in his eyes, not just from fear, but from anger. This is wrong. I didn't do anything, he shouted, but the officers just laughed. Yeah, that's what they all say. One sneered, slamming the door shut. But the laughter wouldn't last. Because in less than 10 minutes, the most feared man in the city's police department was coming. And when he arrived, every lie, every inconsistency, every ounce of corruption was going to be dragged into the light. The squad car rolled out of the mall parking lot, siren silent, but tension loud enough to rattle Marcus's bones. His face was pressed against the cold window, watching the crowd grow smaller, their phones still raised, their whispers still chasing him. He wanted to scream, but his throat felt tight, strangled by humiliation. How could this be happening? I didn't do anything. I didn't steal. I didn't even touch that wallet. Why won't anyone listen? The officers in the front seat laugh like they'd just won a prize. Bet the judge gives you a nice little weekend inside, kid. The driver snickered. Yeah, the passenger added with a chuckle. Maybe next time you'll think twice before stealing from people who actually matter. Marcus's fists clenched in his lap. He wanted to fight back, but what could he do? He was cuffed, powerless, alone. But then, flashes of blue and red filled the rear window. The officers frowned, glancing at each other. Who's that? The driver muttered, slowing the car. The lights grew brighter, closer. A second police SUV swerved around them, screeching to a halt across the lane, blocking their path. The driver cursed. What the hell? The door of the SUV swung open with a slam. Out stepped Captain Elijah Hill, his presence radiating authority like a storm breaking across the horizon. His eyes locked on the squad car with a fury that could melt steel. The officers froze. Their smugness evaporated. Oh no, the passenger whispered. Yeah. The driver finished, his throat dry. That's the captain. Marcus's heart jumped. He pressed his face closer to the glass. Dad. Captain Hill strode toward the car, his coat whipping behind him, his boots striking the asphalt like thunder. He stopped at the driver's window, his jaw tight, his fists clenched. Step out of the vehicle, he ordered, his voice low but lethal. The driver hesitated, trying to force a shaky smile. See Captain Hill. Sir, we were just... Now, Hill barked, slamming his hand against the roof of the car. The officers scrambled out, standing stiff, eyes down like schoolboys caught cheating. Hill leaned into the back seat, his gaze softening for just a moment when he saw Marcus, his son, handcuffed and trembling. His chest tightened, but his voice never cracked. Marcus, are you all right? Marcus swallowed hard, nodding. They said I stole something, Dad. They planted a wallet on me. I swear I didn't do anything. Hill raised a hand gently. I know, son. I believe you. Then he turned, his expression hardening into steel as he faced the officers. You idiots arrested my son, he said slowly, his words laced with venom. You humiliated him. You cuffed him like a criminal in front of hundreds of people. Tell me, what evidence did you have? The driver stammered, his words tripping over each other. Yes, sir. We were told by mall security he was acting suspicious. And you thought suspicious was enough to drag a teenager through the mall in chains? Hill thundered. You planted evidence on him? Is that what you call procedure? The passenger officer tried to speak, but Hill cut him off with a glare so sharp it could slice through stone. I trained you both better than this, Hill growled. And you disgraced this badge by doing what you just did. The silence was suffocating. Neither officer dared to breathe. Marcus sat in the back seat, watching, his chest swelling with both fear and pride. For once, the men who had crushed him were trembling themselves. And then Hill delivered the final blow. You've made the biggest mistake of your careers, he said coldly. Because the boy you tried to frame, he pointed sharply at Marcus, is my son. The officers' faces drained of blood. Their eyes widened in horror. The parking lot was frozen in time, because everyone knew what that meant. The air in the parking lot was electric, thick with tension so sharp it felt like a storm was about to rip the sky apart. The officers who had cuffed Marcus stood frozen, pale and stiff, like statues waiting for a hammer to shatter them. But before anyone could speak, the wail of sirens cut through the air. More squad cars skidded into the lot, doors flying open, uniformed officers spilling out one by one. Some were Hill's men, others weren't, and all of them stopped dead when they saw the scene. Captain Hill, standing like an immovable wall of fury, his son still locked in the back of the squad car, and two officers trembling under his glare. "Captain Hill," one officer called out uncertainly. "What's going on here?" Hill's voice thundered across the lot. "What's going on is that two of your fellow officers just violated every code, every procedure, and every ounce of decency this badge stands for." His words ricocheted off the parked cars, echoing into the growing crowd of bystanders who had followed the squad car from the mall. Phones were out again, recording. Every second was being captured, every angle shared. The officers who arrested Marcus tried to regain control. "Captain, with all due respect." "Respect?" Hill roared, his eyes blazing. "You call this respect? You handcuffed a boy without evidence. You paraded him like a criminal. And then you planted evidence on him." Gasps broke out among the officers, the civilians, the crowd. Murmurs spread like wildfire. One young officer stepped forward, frowning. "Wait, what do you mean planted?" Hill's voice dropped, steady but lethal. "That wallet you claimed you found on him? My son doesn't carry one. He hasn't for over a year. He uses his phone. Ask his friends. Ask his teachers. That wallet wasn't his, it was yours." The two arresting officers' faces twisted, panic flickering in their eyes. The crowd noticed. The cameras noticed. Everyone noticed. Marcus pressed his forehead against the glass from inside the squad car, his chest tight. For the first time since it all began, he wasn't invisible anymore. People were listening. People were seeing. And then, as if the ground itself was shaking under the weight of the truth, another twist hit. "Captain Hill," one of the senior officers said carefully, lowering his voice, "these men didn't report this arrest through dispatch. No paperwork came through. We only knew something was happening because of the call from that civilian inside the mall." Hill's jaw clenched. His eyes narrowed. "No report." The senior officer shook his head grimly. "None, sir. This wasn't an official arrest." The words sent a shiver through the entire parking lot. If there was no report, then this wasn't just overzealous policing. This was personal. This was a setup. Hill turned slowly back to the officers who had grabbed Marcus, his voice a low growl that sent chills down spines. "So tell me, what were you really trying to do tonight?" The crowd hushed. The other officers stiffened. The arrested cops' mouths opened, but no words came. Sweat trickled down their faces. Their silence was louder than any confession. And Marcus? He sat in that car, his heart pounding, realizing that this nightmare was bigger than him. Bigger than a false accusation. Bigger than humiliation. This wasn't just about a black teen accused of theft. This was about corruption. About betrayal. About something rotten inside the very system his father had dedicated his life to protect. And tonight, the mask had slipped. The radio static seemed to echo louder than thunder. Every syllable of that command cutting through the night like a blade. "Unit 12, secure the kid. Do not let the captain interfere. Repeat, secure the kid." The entire parking lot froze. For a moment, no one breathed. No one moved. The weight of those words sank into the asphalt itself, into the hearts of everyone standing there. Captain Hill's eyes went cold, sharper than steel. He stepped toward the radio, his voice like a storm barely held back. "Who just gave that order?" No one answered. The senior officer who had pointed out the missing paperwork grabbed the radio, his hands trembling. "Dispatch, confirm last order." The response came back almost instantly, but it wasn't from dispatch. It was a new voice, calm, deliberate, and menacing. "Follow orders, officer. The kid is a suspect. Do not question further." That voice wasn't one any rookie would recognize. But Captain Hill knew it. His blood ran cold. His pulse hammered in his ears. It was Lieutenant Darren Cole, the man he'd trained years ago, the man he'd vouched for, the man he thought was loyal. And yet here he was, giving illegal orders, targeting Marcus as if he weren't a child, but a pawn. Hill's chest tightened. His hands curled into fists. "Cole, "What game are you playing?" he muttered under his breath. But Cole wasn't in the lot. He was somewhere else, pulling strings, watching this unfold like a puppet master. The crowd in the lot was restless now. Phones were still recording. People were whispering. Why do they want the kids so bad? Why is the captain's son even a suspect? This don't make sense. Marcus pressed his face harder against the glass, his voice muffled but desperate. "Dad, don't let them take me. Please, don't let them take me." Hearing his son's cry pierced through Captain Hill like a dagger. He snapped. "Open that door." Hill barked at the arresting officers. "Now." They hesitated. Eyes flickered between each other, between Hill, and between the crowd circling like sharks smelling blood. "Now." The senior officer stepped forward, pulling the keys from the stunned officer's belt, and unlocked the squad car. The metallic click of the door opening was like a gunshot in the silence. Marcus stumbled out, his wrists still cuffed, his eyes wide with fear, but for the first time, he felt safe with his father at his side. The crowd erupted in cheers and shouts. Cameras flashed. Justice was visible, if only for a moment. But then, tires screeched in the distance. Headlights flared. Another squad car came barreling into the lot, stopping so hard it nearly clipped the curb. And out stepped Lieutenant Cole, tall, sharp, smiling like a predator who had just cornered his prey. The crowd's noise died instantly. Cole's voice boomed across the lot, dripping with authority. "Captain Hill, you're obstructing an investigation. Release the suspect back into custody, now." Gasps echoed through the bystanders. Cameras zoomed in. Every lens locked on Cole's smug face. Hill stood his ground, his son behind him, trembling but watching. "You're not taking my boy, Darren. Not tonight. Not ever." Cole's smile widened, his voice dropping low, venomous. "Oh, I will. And when I do, no badge, no crowd, not even you will be able to stop what's coming." The silence that followed was suffocating. Even the night air seemed to freeze. Marcus looked up at his father, his voice breaking. "Dad, what does he mean? What's coming?" Hill swallowed hard, his eyes locked on Cole. Because deep down, he already knew. This wasn't about theft. It wasn't about a wallet. This was about something much bigger. Something darker. Something that had been hiding in plain sight within his own department. And now, it was coming for his son. The air was thick, humming with dread, as shadows stretched long under the parking lot lights. Marcus could feel his heart pounding so hard it rattled against the steel of his cuffs. The crowd that had once cheered now stood frozen, their phones trembling in their hands, recording, but unsure if they were about to witness justice or something far darker. Lieutenant Cole stood tall, his eyes gleaming like a wolf who finally had his prey cornered. "You don't get it, Captain," he said, his voice calm but poisonous. "This isn't about your boy. It never was. This is about you." Captain Hill narrowed his eyes. "What the hell are you talking about?" Cole smirked. He raised a hand, and from the shadows stepped those strange men. Black tactical gear. No badges. No names. Their boots struck the pavement in sync, like soldiers trained for silence. They didn't look like mall cops. They didn't look like local PD. They looked like mercenaries. The crowd gasped as they closed in. Phones captured every step, every eerie movement. People whispered, "Who are they? They don't look like police. This is wrong. This is so wrong." Marcus's chest tightened. Fear crawled up his spine. He pressed closer to his father. "Dad, who are those men?" Hill clenched his jaw. He had seen men like this before, but never here, never in his city. "They're not cops," Hill muttered, his voice low, almost to himself. "They're ghosts." Cole's smirk grew. "You've stepped on too many toes, Hill. You've exposed too many secrets. You thought you were untouchable, but now your legacy ends with him." He pointed at Marcus. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Hill's fists tightened. His instincts screamed to act, but his brain fought to process the insanity unraveling before him. This wasn't just corruption. This was something bigger, something organized, something that had burrowed itself deep into the very department he led. One of the black-clad men reached for Marcus. Hill reacted instantly. He shoved his son behind him, his voice booming across the lot. "Touch him, and I'll take you all down." The crowd erupted with shouts. Some screamed. Others begged Hill to protect his boy. Cole's grin never faltered. His words cut through the chaos like a blade. "You can't fight all of us, Hill. You can't fight the system." Marcus's breath hitched. He looked at his father, eyes wide with terror. "Dad, what system? What is he talking about?" And that was the moment Hill realized he couldn't shield his son anymore. The lies, the secrets, the battles he'd fought behind closed doors, all of it was about to spill into the open. Before he could answer, one of the shadow officers raised a baton, ready to strike Marcus down. The crowd screamed. Phones shook. Hill lunged forward, his body a shield, his badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. And then, bang! A single gunshot split the night. The sound echoed off the concrete, deafening, paralyzing. The crowd scattered, screaming in terror. Marcus dropped to the ground, covering his head. His ears rang. His heart threatened to stop. When the smoke cleared, everyone froze. One of the black-clad men was lying on the pavement, a bullet hole through his chest. His weapon clattered away, and standing at the edge of the lot, gun in hand, was a woman in plain clothes, her badge hanging from her neck. She stepped into the light. "Federal Agent Ramirez," she announced, her voice commanding, shaking the entire lot. "Nobody moves. This operation is over." The crowd gasped in disbelief. Cole's smug smile finally cracked. Marcus blinked in shock, his voice trembling. "Dad, who is she? What's happening?" Captain Hill stared at Ramirez, his stomach churning, because he knew exactly what this meant. If the feds were here, then everything he feared was true. The corruption ran deeper than anyone could imagine. And now, his son was at the center of it. Kindly subscribe for more interesting and powerful stories.